Ms. Fell, informed by a life in care, is being played out by a cast of fellow care leavers.
To actually see my work being interpreted by leavers from care is such an incredible experience, to see them work through these emotions that they have.
We cannot withdraw from our long and proud history of helping the most vulnerable. The words of the Archbishop of Canterbury today on the escalating row over the decision to stop bringing in lone child refugees under the so-called Dubs Amendment. Only 350 of the expected 3,000 children have been helped so far, but the government claims continuing the scheme would play into the hands of people traffickers. Our senior Home Affairs correspondent Simon Israel has this.
There was talk of 3,000 before the coaches began last autumn arriving at the UK's immigration HQ in South London. Today the Home Office talks of 350 in total. The gate is closing on the Dubs scheme to bring in unaccompanied child refugees stuck in Europe. And the news has filtered through to many European cities. In Athens, this 17-year-old Afghani is, according to the NGO Safe Passage, one of more than 100 in Greece who'd been on the waiting list.
I want to try to be perfect in everything, and I really faced lots of the problem, and I gained lots of knowledge and lots of confidence, and how we can survive without father and without mother.
He has no idea what he'll do next.
So I am really feel disappointed when the British government cannot allow me to come to England, and I feel really sad. So I really hope to go to England, because there is no way to go.
While his future tilts back into uncertainty, the Home Secretary defended the decision to angry MPs. She said the scheme was acting as a magnet.
I am clear that when working with my French counterparts, they do not want us to indefinitely continue to accept children under the Dubs Amendment, because they specify, and I agree with them, that it acts as a draw, it acts as a pull, it encourages the people traffickers.
How does she live with herself, leaving thousands of children subject to disease, people trafficking, squalor and hopelessness?
There are claims children are returning to the muds, if no longer the camps of Calais, which were instrumental in Lord Dubs' amendment. But the government says local councils have run out of capacity, a claim strongly disputed. Several say they offered to place dozens, but never heard back.
The UK could accept significantly more refugees, but we need to make sure the resources are there to support them. And councils have been very clear. We are supporting very large numbers of refugee children. We expect that that number will continue to rise regardless of what happens with the Dubs scheme itself. And clearly, the larger those numbers get, the more resources need to be provided to ensure that no community has an unfair burden.
And the peer who tried to make it all happen today urged the government to find more places.
I think this policy will make unaccompanied children feel a sense of despair. I think they felt a little bit of hope that Britain was doing something, they had some future, and now they feel the door's been slammed shut. And it's very, very bleak in Greece.
Not just Greece, but also in the French snow-covered alpine countryside. For this has now become a temporary home to more unaccompanied child asylum seekers.
When Home Office came, they made us an interview. But the interview is too short, not long. It's not satisfying for us. They ask, they made interview 5 or 10 minutes. It's not satisfying for any people.
Their centre, just outside Lyon, is one of 64 in France, which will close at the end of this week. And what happens then to these child migrants is unknown.
Simon Israel reporting. Well, we asked the Home Office and a number of Conservative members of the Home Affairs Select Committee to come on this programme, but nobody was available. I'm joined now from the Central Lobby of Parliament by the Labour MP Stella Creasy. Stella Creasy, surely the difficulty here is if it becomes known that a door is open, then more and more people will be drawn towards it.
We've got to put to bed this idea that there is somehow a pull factor. What there is a push factor. Sadly, we live in a world where there is war, there is conflict, there is persecution, there is rape as a weapon within war that these children are facing. That is why they are running. Closing this scheme won't stop people coming. It will stop people being able to seek sanctuary in a legal and safe way. It's an absolutely devastating blow for this government to bring in.
The difficulty is that Parliament presides over such a centralised system in Britain that actually, if the government chooses not to fund this properly, then the local authorities cannot cope and the system cannot continue.
But that's what's so short-sighted about this decision, because lots of local authorities are saying, look, we can help, but you've got to give us time, you've got to give us support to get it right. Why are they closing this door now? You know, a week ago, Parliament was resounding with people angry at the behaviour of Donald Trump bringing in a ban on refugees. And just a week later, here we are shutting doors too. What kind of message does that send about Britain?
Well, is it a Trump shadow message?
I am just absolutely mystified. I'm mystified as to why the Home Secretary is blaming the French government for this. When I met with the French authorities, they were very clear that they felt there was an equal responsibility. But she's also overlooking the hundreds, if not thousands, of children in Greece and Italy who also need our assistance. These are children who are now at extreme risk of trafficking and prostitution and exploitation. And we know that 50 children a day are turning up back in Calais because of the failure of the last attempt by this government and the French government to get this right. But these children are our responsibility.
But you know, I mean, 350 sounds a terribly small number, but it doesn't even leave Britain at the bottom of the league. Britain is actually quite near the top on those figures.
Well, we talked about 3,000 because, in fact, there were 95,000 in Europe, so 3,000 seemed a fair amount for Britain to take. And all through the debates and discussions on this, 3,000 was the figure being talked about, not a tenth of it, as this government is now trying to claim. The fact they put out this statement yesterday as a written statement whilst everybody's debating Brexit tells you they know this is shameful.
Isn't there another difficulty, which is that, in all conscience, the Labour Party is not in a good shape to resist any of this stuff? The opposition is now... I mean, I don't know how many shuffles we've had, but it seems to be a revolving door and churn at the cabinet front bench.
Look,
shadow cabinet front bench.
We as a Labour movement have our own challenges, but what we're talking about here is vulnerable children left at risk whilst this government and the French government play chicken with them as to who's going to take responsibility. And frankly, John, that's my top priority tonight.
Well, I recognise that, but you must also have a secondary priority, which is somehow to find some way of having a really logical and cohesive front bench to oppose all this.
Well, look, that's the choice of our leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and I know he's making change at the moment, but I was really proud today to be part of a group with people like Diane Abbott, with Yvette Cooper, all standing up and saying this isn't acceptable, challenging the government, holding them to account and saying, hang on, this House, cross-party, made a promise. I was also pleased to see statements by people like Heidi Allen and Will Quince too. This isn't a party political point. Britain made a promise to those kids and we've let them down, and this government is directly responsible. I don't want us to have Trump logic here, and I don't think your viewers do either.
Well, if the call comes, will you be proud to serve again on the front bench with Mr Corbyn at the helm?
I haven't been on the front bench for a long time. Look, all I want to do is get this policy for refugees right, because that's what really matters, isn't it, right now? Yeah, I know it's fun for people to look at what's going on in the Labour movement and ask questions, but there are 50 kids a day turning up in Calais. Surely they deserve our respect and our attention.
And surely they deserve an effective opposition that can really hold the government to account.
I'm trying my best. I'm trying my best, and so is Alf
You're a lone
Dubs.
voice. You're a lone voice.
No, I'm not. John, that's not fair.
No,
I'm not
but
a lone voice. Actually, there's lots of us across the Labour movement and indeed across this House telling Amber Rudd she's got it wrong and she's got to rethink this. And I hope your viewers tonight will tell their MPs to join that call.
Stella Creasy, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Now, when measured against a slew of targets, 2016 saw the NHS in England's worst ever performance. Record numbers of people waiting too long for cancer treatment, despite an urgent referral. More people than ever before waiting more than 4 hours in A&E. And an unprecedented number of people stuck on trolleys before being given a hospital bed. And so far, 2017 looks like setting new records for missing targets, as our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald reports.
Wynyard Ward at Watford General, a snapshot of the pressures hospitals across England are under. Kenneth Beckley, in some ways, is typical. The 93-year-old was brought in by ambulance on Monday with a chest infection.
How are you feeling?
Rotten.
How have you found it since your father came in?
Well, it's obvious that A&E is under a lot of pressure. They were on trolleys lined up in the corridor there, but once you get onto the wards, the care is fantastic. The staff all work so hard and they're all very caring, so it's still a great service.
Those pressures are not just here, of course. You can see it in the latest NHS figures. For December, 86.2% of patients were seen in A&E within 4 hours, well below the 95% target. For major A&Es, it was even lower, 79.3%. Today's figures are, and this is not in a good way, record-breaking right across the NHS. Too many patients in A&E, too many patients being stuck on trolleys, too many operations cancelled. And yet you come to a ward like this one at Watford General and the staff still seem somehow to manage. There is no doubt about the impact on patients. Across England last year, more than 2,500 patients waited longer than 12 hours to be admitted to hospital. That was more than double the number waiting the previous year. And in A&E, more than 23.5 million patients were seen, compared with more than 22 million the year before.
Year on year it's getting tougher. We have never been better prepared and we've never coped better, but the system is getting tighter and tighter, and I really wouldn't want to go into another winter without seeing a significant change.
The focus is on A&E and delayed discharges because that's where it's most visible. But drill down into the figures, and neurosurgery, for instance, was the worst performing specialty, and the 2-month cancer treatment target was missed for the entire year. Across it all, though, remains the issue of safety.
The important thing for us is actually about focusing on maintaining that safe environment for our patients and making sure that they have access to the right treatment in as timely a way as possible.
And is it always safe?
I think it gets close at times, but actually we have really strong and effective clinical leadership in place in our organisation to make sure that where the concerns are raised, they are raised and dealt with very, very quickly.
And if 2016 was record-breaking, the figures for January are already looking even worse, with more patients and sicker patients continuing to fill the beds of England's hospitals.
Tonight, there are fresh allegations about the British barrister and evangelical Christian John Smythe. After an investigation by this programme into allegations that he'd violently abused young men in the UK, then in Zimbabwe, now a church in a third country, South Africa, has gone public with what it called worrying concerns about his conduct. Kathy Newman is in Cape Town tonight. Kathy.
Yes, John, that's right. John Smythe had to promise more than 30 years ago that he wouldn't give spiritual guidance to young people. And yet today, his local church, just a short drive away, revealed details of contacts, some fairly extensive contacts, with university students. Now, some of those contacts are causing deep concern here. I should add that the church insists that there's no allegations that it's received of a criminal nature. But as in the UK and then in Zimbabwe, so too here in South Africa, concerns have been raised, and only now is the church taking action.
In this quiet suburb of Cape Town, the British barrister and evangelical Christian John Smythe has shut himself in his house since we broadcast allegations he violently abused young men in Britain and Zimbabwe. Now we can reveal serious concerns about his behaviour have also been raised in a third country, here in South Africa.
John Smythe appears to have established himself as a pillar of the expat community. But the friends and neighbours who have welcomed him are now shocked at what they learn about him.
His local church met last night to discuss the allegations, and today the pastor issued a dramatic 5-page statement admitting worrying concerns about Smythe had been raised by congregants last September. Their inquiries concluded
that there had been no inappropriate physical contact, nor had there been any criminal acts.
But Smythe had been pastorally unwise in several respects.
His practice of meeting young men at a well-known Cape Town sports club that began with a game of squash was followed by a shower in a common shower. Then lunch, over which, we were told, John would make generally unsolicited inquiries about the young men's experience of pornography, masturbation, and other sexual matters.
And
offering his advice regarding sexual matters that left the person feeling uncomfortable. Mostly this seems to have occurred on John's first meeting with the young men we spoke with.
University students are among Smythe's fellow churchgoers, seeing him, they say, as a father figure. We're told John Smythe has been giving spiritual guidance to students from here, the University of Cape Town. He's also said to have held regular prayer sessions for young people at his house for years. This despite concerns stretching back decades about his contact with young men. There is no evidence that any inappropriate behaviour took place on campus. The Smythes used to go to the Reverend David Bayer's church round the corner from his home, where he recalls Smythe's Monday night prayer meetings.
He just passed a remark that he had some youngsters who came to his home and that they had ministry time there together, and that I said to him, well done, because I'm sure you can do it very well.
The Smythes surprised Reverend Bayer by leaving his church suddenly a few years ago. Now he's angry with his old friend.
I'm angry on the one side because he's let down everything that he was standing up for, and therefore he turns it on its head. And people point and say, so that's the church. That's not the church. It was John Smythe within that church. Things go wrong in people's lives, and he is going to need help of some sort to sort this out inside him.
Reverend Bayer says he still feels compassion for Smythe and wants to see him.
I need to speak to him to understand and to be able to be of value.
What would you say to him if he was here right now?
I don't know. I could end up in tears probably. That he had such a hidden past and that he did the things he did seems impossible from the man that I knew.
Senior figures in the church in Britain knew about that hidden past more than 3 decades ago, but failed to tell the police at the time. Only in 2013 did the Bishop of Cape Town get a warning from the UK. Now the churches Smythe attended, the friends he spent time with, are asking what they might have missed about the man they thought they knew. Well, after we first reported the allegations about John Smythe last week, the local pastor at his church had told him to hop on the first plane to the UK and face justice. His children are also putting pressure on him to do just that. And I'm told that he is making plans to return to Britain shortly. Obviously, if he does get back to the UK, he'll find that the police are continuing with their investigation. That's Hampshire Police. The lead detective on that case told us that they needed to take care and time with the alleged victims. So I've got to tell you that this story is not concluding anytime soon.
Thanks, Cathy. Now, the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, has told the Lords it is their patriotic duty to pass the bill giving Theresa May the go-ahead to formally trigger Brexit. But the government has played down an earlier threat to abolish the chamber if it holds up the legislation. Today, the Latvian foreign minister has told Channel 4 News that he expects a very difficult debate over whether Britain's divorce from the EU has to be settled before any discussions over a new trading relationship can even begin. And he warned both sides not to get drawn into shows of force for political reasons. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, reports.
Theresa May hopes that Italy's Prime Minister could be one of the friendlier figures round the table in the Brexit negotiations. In the fluid state of Europe's politics, he might not be there that long. But today, he warned off those looking to punish Britain in the negotiations.
In modo amichevole e costruttivo.
We need to show a constructive and friendly approach. There is absolutely no point at having a destructive negotiation between the EU and the UK.
As the bill triggering Brexit was being voted through by the Commons last night, SNP MPs started a chorus of Europe's anthem, Beethoven's Ode to Joy.
Order! I don't want to sing off within the chamber. It's very good of you, much appreciated, but if we can just leave it for a little while. It's been very tense week already. I just don't need any extra. Thank you.
A government source celebrated with a text to journalists warning the House of Lords that if it tries to amend the bill that MPs didn't amend, it could face abolition.
Off with our heads. Well, there are many reasons to want to abolish the Lords, but expressing our views honestly should not be one of them.
You're not going to be cowed?
No, not at all. What are we there for if not to express our opinion?
Britain's now edged closer to next month's formal notification, and while some insist there's unity amongst the 27 other EU members, chinks of disagreements are emerging.
We've had some statements from Poland saying that actually they don't want there to be punishment of the UK. The Baltics are reasonably keen on keeping the UK as closely within the EU's orbit as possible for security reasons. Ireland, I think, will push for a soft Brexit because of the economic issues and the issues with the border with Northern Ireland. And so will the Dutch and the Nordics. The big question is about how Germany decides to play this, I think.
The French being at the most punitive end of the market.
The French are certainly at the most disciplined end of the market, I think.
Latvia's foreign minister has been tweeting home images of his 2 days of talks in London. He senses both sides digging in over whether the Brexit bill needs to be settled before a new trade agreement can be worked on.
I think that one issue that I certainly see as a very tough start for negotiations is the way how we want to approach the process. We see that UK wants to have the complex negotiations on divorce and then new type of relationship. I know that we will be having quite a debate in EU that probably the idea will be let's divorce first and then let's build after that kind of divorce is completed
Settle the alimony.
Relationship. I think that we will spend a lot of time discussing, and maybe it will be very difficult the way how we organize the process.
It's even harder to imagine us meeting the deadline. There's a 2-year ticking clock.
Exactly.
Makes it even harder to meet the deadline.
And I think that one thing what I think we all, those who are making decisions in EU as well as in the United Kingdom, should understand that those 2 years, that's a very short time period. And if there will be too much politics involved, too much kind of, show of force involved, then at the end of the day, those who will be losing will be our own people.
That sounds like a warning to Britain and maybe others within Europe as well.
It sounds as a warning to all.
Does 60 billion euros sound like about the right size of bill for Brexit?
I wouldn't speculate with 60 billion, 120 billion, or whatever sum of money. I would say that first we need to get the Commission proposal on how we are proceeding with negotiations.
Why do you keep doubling it? Why not halve it? The number keeps going up when you speak.
Or 50% discount of 120, yes, but let's not now concentrate on what has not been agreed.
You're very clear Latvia does not want to see Britain punished. Some people amongst the 27 lean the other way, don't they?
Well, I think that immediate sentiment, that when emotions were running high, not only in European Union but also here in the United Kingdom, I think that immediate sentiment and emotion has calmed a little bit down.
It was there.
It was there, no doubt.
And it could come back. Some EU countries want Michel Barnier, the EU negotiator, to steer clear of putting numbers on the Brexit bill early for fear talks could deteriorate, if not collapse. A word that gets used quite often, considering those talks haven't even started.
Gary Gibbon there, and another front in Europe's future world relationships was in play today as the EU's top diplomat Federica Mogherini went to Washington to meet the Trump administration. Potentially tricky talks with the new president's support for the European Union in doubt. Our international editor Lindsay Hilsum is in Washington. Lindsay.
Jackie, President Trump has been quite clear that he's in favour of Brexit, so it makes it rather difficult for Federica Mogherini, who today was here meeting Rex Tillerson, the new Secretary of State. Now, they will be trying to smooth over the cracks which have been created by the President's view. We can't say yet that it's a policy. Because what the president is saying is that he doesn't like the euro, he thinks that Germany is too dominant in the European Union, and he doesn't like the regulation. And the reason he doesn't like the regulation, he has said in the past, is because he blames EU regulations for preventing him from building a wall around his golf course at Doonbeg in Ireland. Now, I've been here for a few weeks now talking to supporters of President Trump. They say they like him because he's not a politician, he's a businessman. But there are problems when your experience as a businessman, not liking the EU regulations because of the sand dunes around your golf course in Ireland, feed into a bigger policy. And that's the kind of stuff that President Trump is finding all the time. And we've seen it in the last 2 days when he's been out defending his daughter Ivanka's branded clothing line.
My work is mission-oriented, mind-expanding, all-consuming.
And so difficult to combine with being first daughter. Ivanka Trump has no official role, but is often at her father's side.
This is a sample of some of our collections.
Now, her business interests have triggered a conflict of interest row. Anti-Trump protesters are encouraging women to boycott her clothing. When Nordstrom said it had dropped the line for pure business reasons because it was no longer selling, the first father took to Twitter.
My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom. She is a great person, always pushing me to do the right thing. Terrible.
Today, President Trump was signing more executive orders. He's exempt from conflict of interest rules, unlike White House staff, who are barred from endorsing products that may benefit themselves, friends or relatives.
Thank you all very much.
So listen to the president's senior counselor this morning on Ivanka Trump's clothing line.
This is just, it's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm going to give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
It certainly is unprecedented. We haven't had other people that have moved into the White House and treat it as some kind of sales network in which they can, endorse and pawn off products. I mean, and that's in essence what they're trying to do. Even with Donald's tweet yesterday, it was essence saying, my daughter has been wronged and her business is suffering from this. And it was an endorsement of not only her business, but it was also a criticism of Nordstrom.
The first son, now in charge of the Trump business empire, supposedly taken entirely out of the father's hands, tweeted a link to a story today saying women across the land were cutting up Nordstrom cards after the political decision to drop his sister's brand. The defense of presidential daughters is nothing new. Harry S. Truman, president in the 1950s, once said that a journalist who criticized his daughter Margaret's singing would need a new nose if he ever met him. A threat that seems almost decorous by today's standards. The row comes just after First Lady Melania Trump filed a lawsuit against the British newspaper website for making allegations that she claims led to her brand losing significant value when she had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and could have garnered multi-million-dollar business relationships. The Trump White House is starting to look just a little bit tacky.
Lindsay Hilson. South Africa's President Jacob Zuma faced opposition in Parliament today from opponents telling him he was rotten to the core over corruption allegations against him. Members of South Africa's far-left Economic Freedom Fighters Party clashed with officials inside Parliament as they were ejected from the chamber for interrupting President Zuma's State of the Nation speech.
Russia has accidentally killed 3 Turkish soldiers and wounded 11 others in an airstrike in northern Syria. A Russian warplane was engaged in an operation against Islamic State when it dropped a bomb on a building used by the Turkish army. The Kremlin has contacted Turkey to express its condolences for the deaths. Russia is a key military backer of Syria's President Assad, while Turkey has been supporting rebels who oppose him. The two governments today signalled they would try to improve their military coordination.
All this week, Channel 4 News has been looking into the ramifications of the fake news phenomenon. But misleading information appears to go well beyond news and can sometimes be found at the heart of the platform the majority of us use to access the internet. When you start typing something into the Google search box, it offers suggestions, and at times these can be profoundly offensive. Journalist Carol Cadwalladr has been investigating why extreme and controversial ideas and results crop up and what, if anything, Google can do about it.
We don't search the internet, we Google it. Google is search. It has an almost total monopoly. 90% of all searches in Europe are made using Google. It now answers some questions directly. It even knows the question before you've asked it, a function known as autocomplete. But is Google reflecting our world or shaping it? So, if I type homosexuality, just take an example, this is the choice that Google's given me. Homosexuality is wrong, homosexuality is a choice, homosexuality is a mental illness, or homosexuality is a sin. So I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try feminism. Feminism is, and its top choice is feminism is cancer, feminism is wrong, or feminism is for everybody. In a Channel 4 News and Comres poll of 2,000 people, almost 2/3 said they used autocomplete at least some of the time, with 1/3 of all people and more than half of young people saying they sometimes clicked on autocomplete suggestions, even if it was something they hadn't gone looking for. I've been writing about issues with Google search for a while. And one of the things that has most disturbed me are Google suggestions around the Holocaust.
Denial of the Holocaust is not a threat just to Jewish history, but a threat to all who believe in the ultimate power of reason.
Marla Tribic survived 4 death camps and was liberated from Bergen-Belsen. If you type the Holocaust is, these are the first suggestions that it gives you. The Holocaust is a lie, the Holocaust is a hoax. You didn't know about this?
I did not know. I'm shocked and I'm upset. And I just feel very aggrieved about it. It's painful for me to hear that. Google is actually promoting a lie, and it's helping the deniers to flourish and to expand and go on lying without any control.
But the issue is people trust Google. In our poll of 2,000 adults, more than 2/3 say they trust Google to give them reliable and accurate information, and almost 1/4 of young people have used a search engine autocomplete suggestion because they thought it offered the best results. I asked Dr. Martin Moore, an expert in the power of the media at King's College London, about the influence of Google's autocomplete. Does this matter? Is this influencing us, and what are the implications of it?
Yes, it matters. It certainly matters. I mean, those are the results that many people will see, not just obviously adults, but children. Even if they don't believe the results themselves, they will be left with a view that actually there are different opinions about whether it happened or not, rather than being a historical fact as it is.
It's not just the autocomplete suggestions that are disturbing, it's the search results themselves. Google has taken steps to improve results around the Holocaust. But if I go to Google now and type the Holocaust is, I'm getting 4 choices, the first of which is the Holocaust is a lie. The second is the Holocaust is a successful historical fiction. The third is the Holocaust is a lie song. And the fourth is the Holocaust is a hoax. And if I just do the return bar, the Holocaust is a lie, I am getting a whole list of denier results. This top one here, the fall of the Holocaust lie, that's a denier site. The entirety of the first page, apart from 2 of them, is to denier sites. So why is this happening? We have little idea, because Google keeps a tight lid on exactly how its technology works.
We only know enough about Google search to understand the kind of major factors that play into how Google ranks things, but of course it's their business model. It's how they run their business. It's how they sell advertising. It's how they target things.
Links to other websites are a key influence on Google's search results. Professor Albright has analysed how hundreds of fake news websites link to the mainstream news and information system.
So were you surprised at, when you were mapping this out, were you surprised at what you were seeing?
Absolutely. In the beginning, I was shocked. I mean, I guess I've never seen a kind of an ecosystem like that with so many smaller sites linking heavily into other media. You know, they were linking everywhere.
This has created a vast network of propaganda and misinformation, which is isolating mainstream media.
What's going on here is the left wing is kind of pushed into its own corner of the network, whereas the right is populated, it's more spread out, it's more ubiquitous across like all kind of ideological spectrums of this network.
Professor Albright calls it an information war, which the right is winning. At Oakwood High School, Rotherham, students have learned all about the Holocaust, but I asked them to do an experiment.
So what did you start typing in
I
Google?
searched Auschwitz gas chamber and it came up straight away with Auschwitz gas chamber hoax.
It suggested hoax to you, did it? And then what's the top site? This is the top site you're getting. Do you know about them?
No, but they don't seem very official because they are again blocked. So they could have advertised on it or like profanity or something.
So tell me what search terms you put in for your search.
Is the Auschwitz gas chamber real?
And was that a suggestion, or was that
No, I did it myself.
You did
I wrote
that
it
yourself. And what? So the top website you're getting. Can you just read that out to me and tell me whose website that is?
Horror stories from the gas chambers of Auschwitz. David Irving's website.
David Irving is a notorious figure in Holocaust denial. In 2000, he sued an American historian for calling him a Holocaust denier.
I'm finding your views quite despicable.
He lost the trial and the judge labelled him a racist and anti-Semite. He now lives in the wilds of Scotland, but every day, he says, he gets letters from young people who find him on the internet.
So here this is the log of emails that you've had from people.
They want to find an alternative history.
And this is what the young people, they're writing to you saying?
I've had a lot of this like that in the last 6 months. 14, 15, 16-year-olds. The youngest has been 14, 13 I think yesterday, 2 or 3 years ago.
A lot of people who seem to be drawn to your work, they believe the entire Holocaust was a hoax.
They're the nutcases.
They're the nutcases.
Yeah.
So you don't agree with that view?
No.
So if I put Google into here.
David Irving thinks the gas chambers at Auschwitz were a fiction. So what does someone reviled as a denier make of Google's suggestions?
The Holocaust.
Yeah.
And then I write is.
Yes.
The Holocaust is a lie. The Holocaust is a farce.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
I think it's scandalous. But that's what happens when you have an unbiased search engine. The algorithm, at the moment they created this list, the algorithm then brings up these answers.
And you think that's scandalous?
Yes.
Why do you think it's scandalous?
Because it's not true, none of it.
But this notion that the Holocaust is a hoax, what do you think of that?
It's wrong.
Google is our gateway to the entire sum of human knowledge. And it's profoundly troubling that these searches appear to be dominated by hate and lies. But what can we actually do about it?
I don't think Google can fix it, and I don't think they would want to fix it. If they were to take on the responsibility for evaluating the truthfulness or the quality or the absence of hatefulness or whatever it is that you're looking for, they would then effectively become publishers. And when they do that, their business model collapses because they're not publishers and they don't want to have the responsibilities of publishers. They don't want to be sued for defamation. They don't want to be sued for facilitating hate crime. They don't want any of that. We have to hold corporations to account as societies. If we don't, then we are in really serious trouble.
The scariest thing for me is not that Google hasn't fixed the problem, it's that maybe it can't. Every day, this network of propaganda and misinformation is taking over more and more of the internet. This is our brave new world. The world, according to Google search, suggests feminism is a cancer, homosexuality is wrong, and the Holocaust is a lie.
And Google told us tonight, Holocaust denial is abhorrent. What appears in our search results is a reflection of content on the internet and not a reflection of the values of Google. Autocomplete predictions are based on searches previously carried out by users around the world. That means that predicted terms are sometimes unexpected or offensive. We have been actively working on improvements to our algorithm. We're experimenting with a new feature that allows people to report offensive search predictions. Well, joining us now to discuss what, if anything, Google should do is Carol Cadwalader, who made that film, and Danny Sullivan, a journalist who's written extensively about search engines, and who joins us now from California. Danny Sullivan, it was said in the film, this is all part of an information war which the right is winning. Is that a concept you agree with?
No. I don't know how you say the right's winning because I haven't seen a lot of searches being done to see what the left results come up with. So I don't dispute at all that there are some very disturbing results that you get. I think a lot of this stuff is abhorrent, but oftentimes I can do a search that perhaps if you were on the right and would be upset about, you get results that come back and it comes up and you're like, well, obviously they're not dominating the whole thing. One example I think was like, I had done a search for white people are, and it came up white people are inbred, and all the results that were dominating the results were for white people being inbred. And if the right is in control of this sort of thing, and especially the alt-right, white right, that wouldn't happen. So I don't really think it's just that the right just get to do whatever they want on Google, no.
But it seems, though, that from certainly our research, most of the results did indeed favour kind of right-of-centre views on these things.
You've done a handful of searches for topics that you would expect should be balanced, and when you see that they're coming from the alt-right, you conclude that it's alt-right. If I did searches for other things that were, you know, perhaps the alt-right might not agree with, they might not be dominated in that sort of way. So I think if you want to make that kind of declaration, you have to do a lot of searches and really go through the results. So not taking away from the fact that the results that you get for some of these queries are terrible, the suggestions you get from some of these things are terrible, but the idea that the alt-right just does whatever they want on Google and just dominate and take care of everything with it from there isn't the case. And in fact, if you go back to what started, especially what Carol had covered, when you did this thing where you were doing a search for is the Holocaust real, the results have significantly changed on Google, both in part because they said they put in an algorithm change, but also because people who were saying these results are terrible have created websites that have pushed all the bad stuff out.
Okay, let me pause you there.
If the alt-right is that powerful, how did that other stuff happen?
Let me pause you there. Carol, did you attempt a left-wing search? I mean, the sorts of things which might upset the right.
Yes, but I think the main thing about this and the search that we focused on was that this was a factual search. This had nothing to do with politics. It was simply a historical fact, the Holocaust. And to get on every browser, on every device, on iPads, on phones, on Firefox, on Chrome, this was the result that we were getting. The Holocaust is a lie.
Well, to what extent then should anything be?
But that's not the result. That's not the result you were getting if you searched for Holocaust, which is what most of the people do when they search on Google. You were not getting results dominated by things that said the Holocaust is a lie.
But in which
case, what you were getting, and I agree entirely, it was terrible. But what you were getting were suggestions that it was, and if you detoured into that, as a small number of people do, then you were getting these results that were dominated, which was terrible. But that's not the same thing as saying, I searched on Google and
Let me pause you there, because then the implication of what you're saying is that nothing needs to be done. Google can sit pretty and carry on with the algorithm it's got.
I didn't say that at all.
Well, but that is the
you started by
implication.
saying, well, the alt-right get to... No, it's not the implication. You said the alt-right gets to do whatever they want on Google, and I said, I don't know that you actually have facts that prove that up. I totally agree that you have disturbing results on Google for all sorts of things, and then you have a big issue of, well, what do you want Google to do about that? And if you go to the historical fact thing, and if the question is, then we need to make sure that we get good factual information, it's very, very, very easy, I think, for a vast majority of people to say with the Holocaust, this is terrible, you shouldn't get something like that. But when I do a search for, is God real? The results that I get coming up from Google are all telling me how God is real without any factual basis for it.
Okay, well,
it's a religious query, but it's important, because if you're going to have a policy that says things have to be factual and provable, then what do you do when you have searches related to religion?
Well, let me ask
and how
Carol.
do you decide
I'm going to ask Carol
what is the fact? Yeah.
What do you do then? I mean, in that situation?
Well, we know. When I wrote the first article, and we were getting at really problematic suggestions for religions, when I was typing "Are Jews" into the search bar, and the suggestion I was getting was "Are Jews evil?" and I was getting a full page of absolute anti-Semitic hate, Google responded and they said they refused to acknowledge that as a specific problem, and yet hours after the piece was published, they turned off that suggestion.
But I asked him what the implications of this were, and he said he didn't really. Well, I mean, I want to ask you: do you want really to restrict freedom of speech, freedom of the media?
Trying to predict what people are going to look for in the internet is not freedom of speech. It's absolutely trying to second guess them. And whatever is in people's heads when they go to the browser, if this is the suggestion that they're getting, that the Holocaust is a lie, the Holocaust is a hoax, then that is the thing. You don't even press the search bar. Your page instantly populates with those results.
Well, so it seems to me we've got a score draw here in which neither of you really have a solution to this problem.
But those are, you've got two, you have two different things, and they're significantly different things. There's the auto-suggestion stuff that comes up on and prompts these ideas, which has been a problem with Google for years. I wrote about it in 2011, and at the time I wrote about it, it was like, you really shouldn't be having these kinds of things coming up where you're reinforcing stereotypes.
And yet, Danny, we still
are. I've got no disagreement that they. I know, and I find that abhorrent, and I'm glad that at least they're finally bringing out the thing that they just announced today.
Danny
and
Sullivan,
we'll see that. But
we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've left ourselves as inconclusive as Google themselves, it seems to me. But thank you both very warmly for discussing it, Jackie.
After the break, the new play inspired by a childhood spent in care.
You could come back for me. Why didn't you come to look for me, man?
We meet the writer and actors behind Brixton Rock, experiences of life after care being played out on stage. Welcome back. Brixton Rock, which was the debut novel by award-winning writer Alex Wheatle, tells the story of a young man struggling to work out just who he is after being brought up in care. The author knows only too well how hard that can be, brought up in a care home himself. Now his novel has been adapted for the stage by The Big House, a theatre company which works with young people who've also been in care. I went to meet the writer and some of the young people bringing his words to life on stage.
The crux of this story is about a mixed-race teenager.
What me?
Who's never known love in all his life. He's grown up in a brutal care home. And for me, the theme of it is really about, even though someone's been battered and bruised in many ways, not just physical, in emotional ways, he is still capable of loving just as hard as anybody else.
I like you a lot, because you make me laugh.
A book brought to life on the stage. The actors, all care leavers. For the writer Alex Wheatle, himself brought up in care, the casting couldn't be better.
I wrote this thing over 20 years ago, And I remember myself going to the local library with a biro and paper in my hand and, you know, wanting to express a certain emotion that I felt growing up through care. And to actually see my work being interpreted by leavers from care is such an incredible experience. To see them work through these emotions that they have, you know, those deep bitternesses, those deep feelings that you have, longing, yearning, and anger as well, yeah.
You could come back for me. Why didn't you come to look for me, man?
Set against a backdrop of the Brixton riots, it's a story about the struggle for identity and the legacy that living in care can leave.
I'm talking about lack of love, lack of empathy, lack of trust for the adults around you, being abandoned.
And it's very much, isn't it, about trying to work out who you are when you don't know who your mum and dad were, or you don't have that past, that structure. How long have you struggled with that issue of identity?
I've struggled with it all my life. I mean, all because some people might describe me as a successful writer today. I mean, sometimes I go to bed at night thinking, how did this happen? Am I some kind of imposter? Have I just kind of got lucky? Because I grew up with so much negativity, you know, so much negative kind of emotions within me that I felt that any kind of success I might have had, it was just a fluke.
For the cast, who've all been through the care system, the characters and storylines feel close to home. Marcus was moved constantly in foster care, referred to the Big House Theatre Company last summer by his social worker.
What's it been like for you being Brenton Brown, playing that character?
I'm finding these little similarities we both have. Like Brenton Brown's like a really isolated person sometimes. I myself, I could say that I've been through that. I'd be in one place, and then I'd get moved to another place as quick as that. Like, wouldn't even be contested. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't really like grow an attachment to something like that. But I'm in a big house. I've got a family, so yeah.
Helping young people forge more positive futures is the main aim of the Big House Theatre Company. Working with writer Alex Wheatle, who knows how hard that can be, is a perfect collaboration.
For me, in this play, is definitely that you can come out the other end and do a lot with yourself.
I can do what I want. I'm in control of my future, you know what I mean? Yeah. I want to show young people that they've got a choice.
And it's not only the young people who are gaining from this.
Here you are, your characters, your reference points going to be on stage. How good does that feel?
It's an incredible feeling because my narrative, my story is being told through them. I mean, what a better way, you can't really beat that for a legacy, can you?
Jackie Long reporting. Tonight's main news, the government has come under pressure for halting a scheme to allow unaccompanied child refugees into the United Kingdom after only 350 of a potential 3,000 children were admitted.
That's it from us for this evening.
That's Channel 4 News. Good evening.
Good evening.